Hi everybody, Lar from Complete Test Success here, and today we're doing a Q&A. So basically any questions you have about any part of the test, reading, writing, listening, speaking, or perhaps you have questions about how to improve certain band scores or whatever problems you might have, basically just share your issues with me. I'll give you some advice or answer your questions or basically provide you with whatever help it is that you need. Aha from Ukraine, welcome to the lesson. Good to see you here. Hi, man. I'm good, thank you. Doing very good. Okay, so that's basically it today. You ask questions or tell me what problems you have, and I'll give you some support. I also have, just while we're waiting for questions to come in, I have free group classes on Zoom in my free live feedback lessons. You can find the link to sign up for that in the video description, and I'll just share the link with you here in the comments as well. So that that link will bring you to the sign up for those free lessons as well. Raisa, sir, if we lack in ideas of essay, then what can we use idioms and phrases in IELTS? So it seems like this is two questions. I'm not 100% sure. So if we don't have ideas in your essay, what are you going to do? Well, the thing is, that's not something that happens to people randomly. That's more like an ongoing problem with critical thinking. So if you're finding it difficult to think of ideas, what you need to do is you need to practice planning essays. So we're talking about IELTS writing task 2. So sit down with a question and plan the essay. Now, don't worry about writing the essay. Writing the essay is useful, but it's not going to help you get better at thinking of the ideas. It's the planning and practicing planning that will help you get better. A big problem that I see with students these days is when they can't think of an idea, their immediate response is go on the internet, start researching ideas online. And of course, you will find an idea online, but by doing that, you're not getting better at thinking of ideas, you're just avoiding the problem. And obviously, in the real test, you're not going to have the internet. So you need to get better at thinking of ideas, thinking about different situations, thinking about the question about what two things are you comparing, thinking about it from different perspectives, just imagining the situation, in your country and things that you've experienced. And it just takes practice. So what happens with most people is, they spend 5 minutes, they can't think of ideas, they get frustrated and they stop or they go online. But the thing is, if you haven't thought of an idea yet, the only thing you can do is dedicate more time to it. So I'll often have students who, the first time they try this, it might take them 40 minutes to think of their ideas. That's a very long time and it's very frustrating. But by doing that, you're getting better and you're learning from the process. And then you continue doing it, plan more and more and more, and you'll get faster and you'll get more capable. And it doesn't take that long, but you just need to stick with it. The other thing then, it looks like your second question is, can we use idioms in IELTS? We should not use idioms. You can use phrases, you can use phrasal verbs, but not idioms. Hi, Ahmad. Can you read an essay and tell me if it's good? Yes, I have a essay correction service. So let me share the link with you there. Just a moment. No, you see the link there. So I have one-on-one corrections, and I have one-on-one corrections, and I have, IELTS courses as well. So if you needed more support, the IELTS courses would be more appropriate. But if you're just looking for, feedback on an essay, what scores you would get, what problems what mistakes you're making, what problems you need to fix, how to improve your scores, that would be the one-on-one corrections there. Hi, CC. Good to see you here. I have two questions to ask. One, when we practice listening, are we aiming for hearing everything? Sometimes I can understand the meaning, but not able to hear some prepositions. Is that okay to move on to new listening materials, or should I keep listening until I can hear all the words like prepositions? It depends what your goal is, really. If you're just trying to improve your listening, it should be, can you understand what's been communicated? Can you understand the information? For prepositions, are you trying to improve your grammar? Is it important that you can hear the preposition, or is it important that you understand the meaning? The thing then as well is, like, different prepositions can change the meaning of the of the text. So perhaps you think it has one meaning, but you didn't hear the preposition, and if you know the correct preposition, then it would change the meaning. It depends what you're trying to do. But if you're just trying to improve your listening more generally, just having an overall understanding is fine. But like we talked about before, just re-listening to it several times. So if you get yourself to the point where you can understand about 80% or 90%, then you can move on to the next text that you're going to practice with. But I wouldn't expect you to understand every single word or to hear and pick up every single word. You're just trying to get a general improvement in your listening, and understanding every fine detail isn't completely necessary. Number two, I'm confused with two past tenses like past tense and past perfect. After learning the principles of these two tenses in grammar books, should I do a lot of reading to see how it is used, or do grammar questions? So the thing is, when you read, you'll get a better understanding of how it's used. And when you do grammar questions, well, really, what grammar questions are doing, mainly they're telling you, can you use it correctly or not? So doing the grammar questions is just to give you the informations like, I've improved enough that I don't need to study more, or I haven't improved enough yet and I need to study more. So that's what you should use grammar questions as. They're just a tool to let you know, can you use it yet or not? And doing lots and lots of practice questions, it's not really helping you improve as much as, like you suggested, like doing more reading, exploring the grammar in texts that have been written by a native English speaker, and seeing how they're used and seeing how the differences apply to the different situations that they're used in. So really, those are two different things with two different purposes. Yeah. Hatun, hi to you. I'm doing good. Thank you. Karen, how to plan an idea to fully develop it? Well, the first thing you're doing is you make sure your idea is relevant to the question, and you make sure your idea is specific. So that's the first thing. If you've done that, then you just need to figure out how are you going to explain that idea. Now, what a lot of people do is when they're developing the idea, they talk about the idea and they forget what the question was about. So when you're developing an idea, you have to talk about your idea, but you also have to talk about what the question has asked you to talk about. So you have to stay on topic of both of those things. So typically explain your idea and give an example of your idea, like, where something similar happened in your life or something similar happened in your country, where you're showing how, it's not just theory, but these things really do happen. Typically an explanation and an example is the easiest way to go with the development. IELTS Weekly. Difference between what extent you agree or disagree and agree or disagree. Well, basically, if it says to what extent, then you just have to say, to what extent means how much. So when it says to what extent do you agree or disagree, you will need to say something like, I completely agree, or I completely disagree, because that completely shows how much. Whereas when the question says, do you agree or disagree, you can just say, I agree, or I disagree. I think the easiest thing to do, though, is just always put in the word completely. That way you'll always be right, and you don't need to think about, do I need it or do I not need it. Just always include it and you'll always be correct. So it's one less thing to think about. Ahmad, I've seen many model answers prepared by IELTS examiners as very good answers on task 1, where there was no clear paragraphing. The whole report was written as one block. What's your opinion? That will not be acceptable for your coherence and cohesion score. So doing this all one paragraph, that's fine for your task achievement, your vocab, and your grammar. But for your coherence and cohesion, you need to show that you can use paragraphing. So that would stop you from getting a very high coherence and cohesion score. Jewel, hi to you. Welcome. Hatun, sir, I want to get 6.5, but my level in writing is low, and my test is after 10 days. What should I do to improve fast? All right. 3 things. 1, focus on task achievement. That's the score you can improve in the least amount of time. So focus on task achievement. 2, make sure that you understand how to use cohesive devices correctly. If you're using cohesive devices incorrectly, that will bring down your coherence and cohesion score very quickly. So for example, if you're using the structure with although, comma, and then the opposites, like the outcome. But a lot of people will go although, comma, and then they'll put in the word but you don't need the word but because you started the sentence with although. So even a small mistake like that, where you're using although incorrectly or inaccurately, that's a problem. Or, worse again is, if you say on the other hand, but then you continue talking about the same side of the topic. So basically those types of mistakes with cohesive devices can really hurt your score very quickly. The third thing is, if there's like one specific grammar area that you make a lot of mistakes in, you might be able to improve that within 10 days. Don't work on vocab. You're not going to improve your vocab score in a short amount of time. So that would be the main thing. Focus on understanding and improving your task achievement scores. Make sure you're not making coherence, and make sure you're not making mistakes with cohesive devices. And if maybe there's one very specific grammar area, you could focus on that. Those would be the 3 things I would say that could have you could have an impact on those things in 10 days. So yeah, I mean, ideally more time would be better. Not necessarily for you, Hatun, but for other people, I would say just in general, don't wait until 10 days before your test. I've had students who, it took us 6 months to get their required scores. When people join my course, one question I ask them is, what scores do you need? And another question is, how soon do you plan to do the test? So, I think everybody can get a very high score with enough time, but you need to be realistic about how long that's going to take. And in general, like when students are joining my one-on-one courses, I turn away students every day because, they want to get a very high score in a very short amount of time. Like, I wish I could, but I can't do magic. So I'm not saying that you can't do it, Hatun. A 6.5 in 10 days, you might be capable of doing that. It's certainly possible, but just my advice to people in general is, try and start as early as you can. Don't wait until later. Doing good, Jude. Thanks for asking. Risa, sir, what does updated IELTS materials means to IDP or British Council? Change writing and speaking topics every year. How to find out or get updated materials? I mean, you don't need updated materials. Well, first of all, what you're talking about is illegal. So I wouldn't recommend it. But more importantly, if you're trying to get a higher score, do the work you need to do to improve. If you've got a vocab problem, improve your vocab. If you've got a grammar problem, fix your grammar mistakes. If you've got a fluency issue, practice speaking more often. Like, relying on other ways of improving your score, it's not advisable. Like, do the real thing that you really need to do, and that will guarantee your success. You can go online and you find all these scammers saying give me your money and I'll give you the test questions that are available at the moment. Can you trust somebody who's trying to make money illegally? Probably not. Do they have the real questions? I don't know, but I certainly wouldn't trust somebody who's taking your money for doing something like that. So yeah, just try and really improve your weaknesses. Find out what reasons you have for getting a lower score than you need and fix those problems. I mean, there's nothing more effective than that. Hi there, welcome. When people give partial agreement to a question, does that mean they think it's true and untrue at the same time, or they want to base it on a condition which is not satisfied? They would disagree. I'm not sure, but I also don't recommend partial agreement. It's more complicated, and if one important part of your task achievement score is that your opinion is always clear. And when you're trying to agree and disagree at the same time, you have to clearly state why it is you do agree and you don't agree. And if you're making grammar mistakes or coherence and cohesion mistakes where that becomes unclear at some point, then it's affecting your task achievement score as well. So you're going to make your life a lot easier by just fully agreeing or fully disagreeing. I don't recommend partial agreement for that reason. How to pass the IELTS listening part? It's too difficult. Okay, so the thing that a lot of students don't do is analyze their mistakes. So what you do a practice listening test and look at every incorrect answer and try and analyze your mistakes in a way where you can find out what went wrong. So, sometimes it'll be you didn't understand the vocabulary, so you have a vocab problem. Sometimes you'll be looking at the transcript. You can look at the transcript and go, oh, okay, I know the word, just I didn't recognize it when I was listening. So that's a listening problem. You need to improve your listening skills and practice listening more. Sometimes it will be you knew the answers, but you didn't know how to spell the word correctly. So you have a spelling problem and you need to fix that. Or, there are many different possible reasons for you getting your answers wrong. So what you need to do is go through each question like that. Determine why did you get the answer wrong, make a list of those mistakes and fix them. Once you've finished fixing them, you go and do another listening test and you repeat the process. So, it's not just about, there are different strategies that are helpful. There are different tips that are helpful, but ultimately you'll need to find out what you're doing wrong and fix those problems. That's the main way that I would recommend improving your scores. Olafunke, hello to you. Ahmed, thank you for answering my question, Lar. But why would the examiners write their response as one block? Can we say the examiners were wrong? I'm not sure what you mean here. The examiners will write their answers as one block. Oh, you're talking about the essay with no paragraphs. Yeah, that's just a mistake. That's just a mistake, Ahmed. Hi, Domenico. Good to see you here. Sam, hi, Lar. I can understand a wide variety of vocabulary, especially during listening and reading, but I'm unable to use them during speaking. What do you think is the reason? That's the same. Everybody is the same. Hassam, that's not just you. That's everybody in the world. And it's not just when you're speaking in English. It's the same in your first language. The example I would give for myself, if I'm reading an English science book, maybe about physics or something, I'd be able to understand it. I can understand it, but there are words there that I don't know how to use. So, even in your own language, when you're reading some specialized area, it would be the same situation. So everybody will have words that they can understand but cannot use, not just in the second language, but in their first language as well. So that's normal. You just need to, your brain just needs more time and more exposure to that word or those words before it kind of understands them to a depth that you're ready to start using it. So it just takes time. I mean, all the words that you're using correctly now in your speaking and in your writing, they were once, in that same part of your brain that, you understand them but can't use them. So it's completely normal. It's nothing to be worried about. That's just the same for everybody. Hatun, you're very welcome. Hi, Faisal. Right now, I'm in university preparing some of my documentation. I think I will never enjoy the whole. Happy to see you. Happy to see you too. Thanks, Faisal. Eva, please, if you start a second paragraph with a topic statement, can you add to set the ball rolling instead of firstly? No. To get the ball rolling means to get started. If it's a second paragraph, oh, okay, the second paragraph is in the first body paragraph. Okay. To get the ball rolling is too informal. That would be something that you might hear in a speaking presentation or something. But it's not a phrase that's suitable for academic writing. So no, that's not okay. How have you been, sir? Doing good. I'm back from the stunning city of Dublin, which I've fallen in love with. Great, good to hear it. I've spent very little time in Dublin myself. I haven't been there much. Raisa, do connectors change every time as per the content of the paragraph in IELTS? Well, I mean, you need to use the appropriate connector for the situation. There's only a small number that will be appropriate. The wider range that you can use accurately, certainly that's better for your score, but it wouldn't change every time. I mean, if you tried to write an essay without the word and, or without using the word and twice, I don't know if it's possible. I don't think I could do it. So, don't put yourself under extra pressure to change it every time. I think that's not required and making things more difficult than they need to be. So I wouldn't worry or about that or advise it. Fazal, on computer base, before each module, you will provide a short video just to know what each section required. I experienced in my last exam. Good. That sounds useful. Hi, Mandeep. Welcome. Welcome to the lesson. Hi, Mamadou. Is practicing from Cambridge books enough for my IELTS preparation? Will the real test be more tough than these books? If you're talking about IELTS reading and IELTS listening, then those books are enough. They're the same difficulty level, same format, same types of questions used. They're really there. They're all you'll need. But like I was saying earlier on, you do need to analyze your mistakes, find out what you're doing wrong, fix those mistakes. If you're doing that, then those books are definitely enough. Hi, Mahidi from Bangladesh. Very good. Today, my question is about heading matching of reading. Can you suggest some types which would be efficient for how can control time while solving reading? So matching headings are a common question for students to get wrong. And the problem is simply that with matching headings questions, they'll have headings that seem the same. So like, you've read paragraph 1 and you think it might be heading number 2 or heading number 4, and you're not sure is it 2 or 4. When you read number 2 and you read number 4, it seems like they have the same meaning. Well, they don't, but the reason that you think they have the same meaning is because of your language ability. So how can you solve that problem? Well, spend a few months improving your English, or even spend a few years for some people, depending where you are at the moment. But basically improve your language ability so that you can understand the difference between those two. However, that's not always an option. So when you're in the test, basically you don't know if it's 2 or 4, so you have to guess. And the advice that I'll generally give in these situations is to guess quickly, because if you spend a long time guessing and then you guess, or you guess quickly, it's the same outcome. You just guess and you hope you're right. But if you spend a long time doing it, then you might not have enough time for other questions that more time will actually be helpful for later in the test. So yeah, don't rush it. Don't just guess without looking at all the headings first. But when the time comes that you just don't understand the difference, you have to guess, and there's nothing you can do. Domenico, sir, I'm considering retaking the IELTS exam because I faced some difficulties on test day due to my broken reading glasses. Oh, that's unfortunate. My eyeglasses broke the night before the exam. Oh, that's terrible. Yeah, it's likely that you'll need to reset the test, but if wait till you get the scores first. Couldn't buy a replacement. Said I'd have been unable to buy it without a prescription. Yeah, I had no chance but to take the exam with my broken reading spectacles. As a result, I believe I did quite well in listening and speaking modules. Yeah, but I mean, it sounds like you haven't got your scores yet, so just wait and see what happens with that. Hassam, is there a particular method to overcome this issue? Vocabulary that I'm unable to use during speaking. So we were talking about that earlier on, Hassam. It just takes more time. Basically, like I've read research, don't know if it's 100% true, but what they say is you need to kind of see that word or hear that word 8 to 10 times before you're ready to use it yourself. So, the more you read, the more often you will see these words. And then your brain just gets a deeper understanding of how they're used and, becomes confident enough to use those words. And then you become confident enough to use those words. So it's about being exposed to that word, having seen it enough in different contexts and understanding more deeply, like how to use it, what context to use it in, how it's used grammatically. And once you get a deeper understanding of that, then you're ready to use it. But, that comes with, how much time do you spend reading English every day? How much time do you spend listening to English every day? Is it a word related to, let's say it's a word related to sport, but you don't watch sport, you don't read about sport, you never have any interest in anything to do with sport. So a word that's related to a topic that you never interact with, that's obviously going to take much longer to become part of your spoken vocabulary than a word related to a topic. Like, for example, if you're big into fashion and you read about fashion all the time, but because you're going to see that word more often, you're going to be able to use it more quickly or sooner. So it's just about getting more exposure to those words. Hi, Glorina. So we already talked about how to improve reading, about analyzing your mistakes, finding out what you're doing wrong, and taking action on those things. So the same advice would apply for reading and listening. It's basically the same thing. Mandeep, sir, please tell me about phrasal verbs and how can I use them to get perfect bands in speaking. Sir, in real exam, I got 7.5 bands in speaking, but I want to get 8 or 9. So it's not just phrasal verbs that are going to bring you from a 7.5 to an 8 or 9. It's you must know a lot of phrasal verbs already. Like even something as simple as go out. Knowing what that means. And it's just about continue learning vocabulary as you've learned. If you're able to get a band 7.5, you obviously know how to study vocabulary to the point where you're able to use it accurately and use a wide range. So it's not that you need to do anything differently now compared to what you've done before. You just need to continue doing what you've always been doing. What strategies, what techniques, what have you done to get yourself to a band 7.5? That's the exact same thing you need to do, just more of it, continue doing it. Another few years of continuing to study English and mastering more complex structures and using more complex vocabulary. It's just basically what you've done right up and from when you started until now. That's just more of the same. There's nothing new that you need to do at this point. It's just continue studying in the way you always have. So would you like to share information about cue cards? What information are you looking for, Aunt Rana? What type of thing do you want to talk about? Struggled a bit of reading and writing. I had to constantly hold my glasses still in place with one hand while writing with the other. That's not ideal. One of the temple of the glasses came off as the screw holding the frame of the glasses fell out. That's unfortunate. Bad timing, Domenico. Hi, Panthea. Good to see you here. Mamadul, which is the best method for speaking part 2 section? Vocab-based approach or story-based approach? Because when I focus on the story, I always use simple vocab. Well, I mean, vocab-based approach is going to improve your vocab, and story-based approach is going to improve your fluency. So, I mean, play to your strengths. Which is generally better? Do you think you'll get a higher vocab score or a higher fluency score? And like I said, just play to your strengths. Show what you're capable of. Get the highest score you can in your best score, in your best band. But it could just be, you know, your fluency isn't good enough, so you can't think of the vocab that you want while you're speaking. It could be just a fluency problem, that you already know the vocab but you can't think of it. So, you know, consider working on your fluency, and that could potentially fix the issue for you. Madam Ali, could you please share techniques of answering for each band respectively? I'm not really sure what your question is. What do you mean for each band? So we have different band scores for writing and speaking. So that wouldn't relate to answering the questions. Just add, basically, like if we're talking about speaking, you've got fluency, vocab, grammar, pronunciation. Now, if you've got a vocab problem, you need to fix it before you go to the test. Trying to get a higher score on the day by just magically being better doesn't work. Same applies for grammar, same applies for pronunciation, but same applies for fluency, to be honest. But at least when you're in the test, my recommendation would be just focus on answering the questions, answering them clearly, and developing your answers fully. Whatever vocab naturally comes to you, whatever grammar naturally comes to you when you're speaking, just use that. Whatever way you naturally pronounce the words and the sentences, just do that. So when you're in the test, you should just focus on, you know, answering the questions, not trying to think of grammar structures and like trying to use vocab you normally wouldn't use. Don't make things more complicated. When you're in the test, just focus on answering the questions. But if you have a problem with fluency, vocab, grammar, pronunciation, you work on those things and fix them now. I think that I'm not sure if I've answered your question, to be honest, but I think that might cover it. Adil, sir, in the last essay correction video, the question was, because of growing population, more homes are needed to be built. Do you think houses should be built in existing cities or in the countryside? And the person's view was that houses should be built in existing cities because there are more job opportunities in cities. His body paragraph was, first, in every nation around the globe, cosmopolitan settings have the greatest job opportunities. This is because most of the opportunities are. Okay, so I'm not sure what your question is here. I'm not sure what you're asking me at the moment, Adil. I understand what you've said, but I don't know what information you want from me. Mandeep, sir, please tell me, in IELTS academic reading, vocabulary is very important. However, to remember every word is very difficult, especially science, technology related words. How can I encounter vocabulary in academic reading? Well, part of the test is, you know, being able to understand the sentence. So if there's a new word there's a word you've never seen before, but you can still, from the context of the paragraph or the context of the sentence, you can still understand what's being discussed. So you would never need to know every single word. Like when I do an IELTS reading part 3, there will often be words that I've never seen before, but that wouldn't stop me from answering the questions correctly. So, you know, don't panic when you see a new word. Don't panic when you see a word you've never seen before. You just need to have a general understanding of what's being discussed. And the more specific the meaning of a word, if we're talking about, you know, what did you say here? Words related to science and technology, the more specific the meaning of a word, the less likely there will be a synonym. So it's unlikely that you'll need to know synonyms of these words anyway. So a part of your reading test would be related to understanding from context and not just knowing every single word. But like we were talking about earlier in the lesson here, you can also spend more time focused on topics that you're less familiar with. So like if you never ever read anything about science, well, you're not going to have very good vocab in that area. So preparing for the IELTS test can often be reading about topics that you would normally have no interest in, and allowing yourself an opportunity to develop vocabulary and learn it and have vocab related to those topics as well. Sir, in each part of speaking, which tense should we use? So the tenses are specific to when the thing you're talking about happened. So if it happened in the past, or if you're imagining what's going to happen in the future, or what you think will happen in the future, if you're talking about a situation now. So the grammar tenses are just related to what you're talking about. So it's got nothing to do with the part of the speaking test. So it sounds, to be honest, like you're not really sure why or when to use different grammar tenses. So that's something that you need to study. You need to understand when to use each one, when it's appropriate, when it's necessary to use the different grammar tenses. Rana, how we share information with examiner about cue cards data. I'm sorry, I don't fully understand it. How can we share? So the question gives you. I don't understand the question. I'm sorry. I'm happy to answer the question. If you can give me more information, I'll answer it for you. But at the moment, I'm not sure what the question is. Sir, please tell me how to generate simple ideas in task 2 questions. I have a video about this. Let me share you a link. I'll just paste this here. So task 2. Okay, so Mandeep, you're asking about how to think of ideas. I have a video on YouTube about that. Take a look at that. You'll see it. You'll see it there. You'll find that link in the comments. I just shared it in the comments there. Hi, Junaid. So how can you improve your listening in part 3 and part 4? Well, basically depends. Like we said earlier, you need to analyze your incorrect answers and try and figure out what you've been doing wrong. So like, why did you get the answer wrong? What did you do wrong? How did you arrive at the wrong answer? So like we said, it might be your spelling, it might be your vocab, it might be your listening, it might be you're not familiar with the format of the test or the question type. It might be you didn't read the instructions properly. There are so many different reasons. But, if you're working on your spelling, but you never make spelling mistakes, that's obviously not the solution. So try and figure out what exactly you're doing wrong first, and then work on fixing that problem. Mamadul, do you have any plans to arrange some giveaways for speaking writing feedback in the upcoming days? Just asking because I've learned a lot of things from other people's feedback before. No, I'm going to continue giving you guys group feedback. So, with the live streams and the live feedback lessons on Zoom. So I'll continue doing that. So there will definitely be feedback. The one-on-one support that I give is a paid service. So, if you want to join the group classes and get feedback with everyone else, then just continue coming to these live streams. And if you're looking for one-on-one support, you can join my course or use my one-on-one correction service. And then, if you're interested, you can just send me an email as well, if you want to talk to me about that in more detail. Ahmed, when it comes to writing task 1, different people interpret data in different ways. Therefore, they have many different overviews. So how can examiners evaluate it? I mean, they can evaluate if it's right or wrong. So it's not really interpreting the data. It's not like, to interpret the data would be look at it and imagine what the outcomes will be in the future. So you're not interpreting it. You're just describing it. So you can analyze the data in different ways, but no matter what way you analyze it, it's going to be right, or you've done it correctly or incorrectly. So the examiner is going to check what you said with what information is on the graph, and if it's accurate, then that's okay, and if it's wrong, then it's wrong. So there you don't need to worry about the examiner being incapable of doing that. That's not going to be a problem. And people writing different overviews is completely fine. As long as it's been done accurately, then you have no reason to be concerned about that. Sir, in writing task 1, like graph, vocabulary, maps, vocabulary, will differ or not? Yeah, definitely. You definitely need different vocab. So like, describing the location on a map, that's very specific vocabulary, and you need that. Whereas describing, increases and decreases, different trends, and having the vocab to describe that stuff. So yeah, definitely, you definitely need different vocab for those, for sure. Could you provide time separately for me in order to improve fluency? Absolutely. I do that with my students all the time on my one-on-one courses. So yeah, absolutely. Let me share the link. Oh, I shared that link earlier on. So if you look at the link in the comments, says one-on-one corrections and IELTS courses. You'll see that service there, Deco. Mamadul, I have seen all of your speaking feedback videos, and those are masterclass. Thank you very much. Rana, there will be some cue cards that are given us to talk about, like if the card shows some information about friends' properties, like hair height, and some more interesting things about him. Yeah, so I mean, you can follow the prompts. You've got a main topic. So at the top of the question, you've got a main topic, and then you got 4 prompts. You can talk about the prompts if you want. You don't have to. So if you're asked about like the length of somebody's hair, and you don't want to talk about that, that's fine. You have to talk about the person, but you don't have to talk about their hair if you decide that that's not something that's really important or relevant to the presentation that you're giving, or to the answer that you're giving. So yeah, you don't have to focus on every prompt. Domenico, in part 3 of the test, the topic was about giving advice. I noticed that the examiner posed 2 rather challenging questions towards the end. It seemed like the examiner picked up on my extensive vocabulary and wanted to delve deeper into the discussion. Other than that, she looked quite inquisitive about the point I brought up, so she tried to challenge me. That's normal. Yeah, you would expect that. Everybody's going to get challenging questions, So like, what might be an easy question for you would be challenging for someone else. So that's as far as the examiner would push them. But if that question's easy for you, they'll stay pushing you further and further. So yeah, that sounds right. That all makes sense. What materials are the best ones to be studied for IELTS, sir? My ones, my materials. And you're going to need Cambridge IELTS book for reading and listening. I'm laughing, but I'm also being honest. Mandeep, dear sir, I'm writing. I got 7 bands because I frequently produced error-free sentences. However, I want to get 8 in writing. So please tell me, what should I do? You're going to have to improve everything. Fewer errors in your grammar, wider range of vocab, fewer mistakes in your vocab, better task achievement where you're developing your answers more fully and it's all appropriate. Everything has to improve. So, if you're going from a 7 to an 8, it's not going to be you have to do one thing, you have to do everything. And you're talking about error-free sentences, that's relating to grammar. So that will be one part of it, but, there's much more than that would need to be done as well, Mandeep. So grammar, definitely, but also don't neglect the other parts. And also vocab takes longer to improve than the other areas. So, starting on that straight away would definitely be a good idea. Raisa, in 4-paragraph structure in essay, if we write 5 body paragraphs, is it okay in IELTS writing task 1 and IELTS writing task 2? Yeah, you can write 5 paragraphs. I can't really see the reason why you would need 5 paragraphs in task 1, but if it's logical, that's absolutely fine. And again, in task 2, you would very often see 5 body paragraphs in task 2, and again, that's absolutely perfect. As long as it's logical, as long as the organization is logical, then it's perfect. Whatever number of paragraphs you use, it's not about one, you have to use 4 or you have to use 5. It's, are you organizing the essay logically? And if you are, then it's going to be fine. How many paragraph? Any 5 paragraph in both task 1, task 2 structure? I mean, my recommendations are when you need 2 ideas in your essay, you'll have 4 paragraphs. So introduction, conclusion, 1 for each idea. If you have 3 ideas in your paragraph, you're going to have 5, introduction, conclusion, and then 1 for each idea. And if you need 4 if you need 4 ideas, I recommend 4 paragraphs. So you'll have introduction, conclusion, 2 ideas in the first, 2 ideas in the second. So it just depends on the number of ideas for me. But different teachers will have different will recommend different structures. So just follow one teacher and you'll be fine. What type of essays are usually asked to be attempted in the IELTS? I mean, newspaper or magazine, anything else better to study? Well, if you're reading newspapers and magazines, that's to improve your vocabulary. You can use them to improve your grammar as well, of course. But, again, you need to just consider what part of the test are you trying to improve. So if you've got task achievement, coherence and cohesion, vocab, grammar, which one are you trying to improve? And what mistakes are you making? What are you doing to fix your mistakes? So, reading and newspapers are great, but only if they're helping you improve the thing that you need to improve. So just kind of try to be strategic about it. Reading newspapers and magazines won't help everything, but they're definitely very, very beneficial. A great resource to have. I know in general idioms are felt to be informal, but are there any formal idioms or idiomatic expressions? Well, you will have formal idiomatic expressions for sure. But the thing is with idioms, it's not that they're formal or informal. It's that they're not commonly used. They're outdated. They're an old way of speaking. Like in the way, if you read Shakespeare, the language, of course, it's English, but the type of language being used is different compared to the language being used now. The language is always evolving and changing. So if you're speaking in a way that was relevant, like 100 years ago, but that's not appropriate now. So that's the problem with idioms, is generally that they're just not used in modern English. A model essay book for task 1 or task 2. I have sample essays on my website. So just go search for Complete Test Success online, and you'll see under task 1 and task 2, the heading at the top, you'll see sample essays there. So one part 3 question was, why do some people tend to avoid receiving advice from others? The point that made her curious was the reflection of person's weakness. Good. Fayad, sir, how we could receive your materials for IELTS? Would you please to share your procedure to be benefited from that? Absolutely. If you just click, you'll see probably under the video where it says Complete Test Success. Just click on that on YouTube. Oh, you're on Facebook. So if you're already there, if you're on Facebook, go to the videos section and you'll see all the different videos that I've made about the different parts of the test there. Go for the recorded ones. They're very condensed and concise and cover pretty much everything. Whereas the live streams that I do are always related to giving feedback to students. So you won't learn as quickly from those as you would from the recorded ones, which I haven't made any of for quite a while. Okay, so seems like that's the last question there. Thank you all very much for joining, and I'll be back next week. We will focus on a specific part of the IELTS test next week. So join me there and I'll look at your work and I'll give you feedback on any mistakes that you're making. So until then, take care, everyone. Best of luck to those of you who have tests, and bye-bye.